So you were reading from this?
Yeah. So yesterday Maharaja chose 2 meditations. We first read one, discussed and asked questions, and then one more. So you can choose whatever you want.
This is a tough book.
Yeah. Yeah, so most of us were here yesterday, but for those who are new, we started reading out of this book, The Beggar. It's part 4, so it's the last part that Bhakti Tirtha Maharaja wrote. And it's called To Die Before Dying. So we thought this is a good meditation to, take with us and talk about the theme, because it's now so present in our lives. So yesterday we had the company of Naga Patni Mataji, and today Ter Kadamba Prabhu. So we're looking forward to your to your inspirations and insights. So I'll give you the microphone. Unfortunately, we don't have a stand at this first.
This is not, or
this is for Lala.
Okay. All right. Cool. What meditations did you read yesterday? Just so I don't.
One from the past, about the past. Well, when you start reading and we know it already, we'll let you know.
Okay. So I'll just. All right. I was in Maharaja's room like 3 days ago, and he said, "Ter Kadamba, come over here." And he looked at me in the eyes and he said, "This is going to happen to all of us." Mm-hmm. So I can see here it says we will all very soon have a special appointment with death. So I think I'm going to take that one. And you can just stop me if you've heard it before. Okay. We will all very soon have a special appointment with death. In late October of 1977, Srila Prabhupada said, "Do things very carefully." Oh, Hare Krishna. Thank you. Hare Bol. Thank you. Srila Prabhupada said, "Do things very carefully. I'm already dead, but still, I'm giving you instructions as far as I can." Through this statement, he was reminding us that he would soon be leaving, but he was also sending a reminder that we are all around the corner from death and must therefore do the necessary while we can. Excuse me. Lord Brahma lives for 311 trillion and 40 billion earth years. 1 day of time, according to the demigods, is equal to 6 months of our time. Although Lord Brahma and the demigods live for a long time in comparison to our situation, it's all relative. They also live up to 100 of their years, but in every species, death is inevitable. Yudhishthira Maharaj explained that the most wonderful phenomena is how people see others around them dying, but still think that they themselves will never die. People are absorbed in the mundane, living as if they will forever remain in these present bodies. No one is allowed to cancel or postpone their appointment with death when the scheduled time arrives. Neither can someone else sit in for us. We have to personally present ourselves. We all very soon have a special appointment with death. At a funeral home, the bodies of the deceased lie in caskets. Some seem to have a smile on their faces, while others seem to have tormented expression. Some jivas leave the body very peacefully with a glimpse of the beauty they will encounter. The helpers who come for them are most divine, pleasant and refreshing. Others are horrified as the Yamadutas. The superintendents of death in charge of the sinful come to snatch them out of their bodies. As they perceive their fate, they're petrified. Even though the morticians at the funeral parlor try to make each person's body appealing, it is obvious to all the mourners that the person has been called away to their special appointment. We all very soon will have a special appointment with death. A short visit to the graveyard is even more revealing. One will encounter different types of tombstones and monuments. The grass is manicured and flowers are lovingly placed over many of the graves. Inscribed in each stone are the date of birth and the date of death. Again, we are reminded that just as sure as one is born at a particular time, one will also depart at a designated day and time. Although some of the deceased were wealthy, beautiful, famous, etc., there is little to distinguish one body from another, because they're all placed 6 feet under the ground with dirt piled on top. Some tried to ignore, deny, and yes, even conquer over death, but when the designated time arrived, each person was singled out from millions of other prospective clients. We all very soon have a very special appointment with death. Some of the bodies in funeral homes and graveyards died very young, and others remained in their bodies for over 100 years. Some lived in solitude, and others had thousands to participate in their funeral ceremony. However, the present differences are less than the similarities, because in each case everyone who knew them has left them to be alone and has walked away from them, never to associate with that physical body again. As Grandfather Bhishma explained on his deathbed, everyone will walk away from us at death, and everything will separate from us. Only dharma or adharma, the result of virtuous or non-virtuous acts, will follow us. The deceased in the funeral parlors or in the graves are proof that in the end all associates walk away from us in sadness, fear, and sometimes anger. We all very soon have a special appointment with death. The bodies are disposed of in different ways according to the culture. Some are buried, others cremated, thrown into the river, or left alone on a mountain or sacred ground to be eaten by vultures and wild animals. Although the final rites vary, the ultimate results are the same. The body will be eaten by worms, insects, fish, or birds, thus returning to the natural elements. We all very soon have a special appointment with death. Some of the deceased died in accidents, some succumbed to disease, some were murdered, some committed suicide, and other deaths happened at birth. Whichever way death chooses to call, each person is selected out of billions to leave on a precise day and time under particular circumstances. And in every case, not one person could hide, deny, or postpone their appointment. When death called each client, very few were eager to honor the call. Most had many things to do, to work on, to complete, to finalize, etc. Very few were ready to accept full closure. Most felt that their existence in the body was very short and incomplete. Of course, they're all right. Whether one dies at birth or lives for over 100 years, whether one had lived in solitude or been very social, whether one had been famous or infamous, whether one had been a material success or failure, rich or poor, sick or healthy, a theist or an atheist, the similarities are that after a short time in the body we must depart. Even if we consider demigods' time or the lifespan of Lord Brahma in connection with the eternal time associated with the soul, the time we're in these bodies is very short. No one will have to wait a long time before death specifically calls for them, for we all very soon have a special appointment with death. Death has looked in my direction and has pointed at me. Her mouth is open. Soon I will see if she is calling my name. I am that lowly beggar who will be called forth now or very soon by death. I pray and beg that when the decision is finally made, I will accept and receive it with excitement and purity. Let us all get ourselves ready and help others get fully ready for their special appointment with death. Do I say something now, or do we just dive into questions? Yeah, there's a couple of things to say. I remember when my grandfather was passing away. He was living up until he was 94 in his own apartment, doing everything himself. And then suddenly he got like the flu, and that's a serious thing when you're 94, and he got taken to hospital, and they found that he had cancer in practically everywhere in his body. Right? He passed away 2 weeks later. And at that time he called me, this was when I was brahmachari, he was not known as a religious person. And he called for me, he said to my parents, I need Klaus, that's my legal name, I need Klaus, because I can talk philosophy with Klaus, I can't talk philosophy with you. So we came up and he started talking about the Brahman, like just realization. He doesn't know anything, but there's a oneness over everything, and the Holy Spirit he talked about. It's kind of a Paramatma thing. And then he told me, whatever you need to do it now, because it's over in a moment. Right? Like one day you're 13 years old playing around in the garden, and the next day you're 94 lying in the hospital waiting to die. And it ties in with what the Maharaja is talking about here, is that, a day of Lord Brahma is like 311 trillion years. It's beyond what we can even comprehend, right? It's the blink of an eye in the spiritual world, right? So when we get there, Kadamba Swami is going to be like, hey, you're already here, right? But for us, because we, like, the material time is when we won't accept that we're not the controllers. That's when things become material. And that's when it slows down, it becomes painful, and we won't accept it. Like being in the dentist chair, the half hour there is a lot longer than a half hour in front of you guys, right? Because we don't want it. That's what makes it material, actually. So this is kind of a testing time for us, where we should be very grateful that we have this spiritual family and we can rely on each other and be there for each other, right? And as the Maharaj ends very beautifully, I pray and beg that when the decision is finally made, I will accept and receive it with excitement and purity. Let us all get ourselves ready and help others get fully ready for their special appointment with death. So, I mean, who's to say that one of us doesn't croak before Maharaj? We don't know, right? There was a journalist who said to Prabhupada, how old are you? And Prabhupada said, old means you're about to die, so who can really say who's old here? Right? We don't know. Hare Krishna. Questions? How do we do the thing?
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. I was wondering what we can do when someone close to us die. I heard something like we can put tulsi mala on their neck, and you can just sprinkle some holy water. But could you share what we can do, and if you can, what's the reason behind it?
Hare Krishna. Yeah, it's the same as when it's not obvious that they're dying, right? Because we're all dying all the time, right? So you can connect them with Krishna. So one way to do it is holy water. One is tulsi. One is Vrindavan dust, Kirtan, reading Bhagavatam. That's all Maharaj wants to do right now, is just discuss Bhagavatam. Like there are a lot of, it's like we're cutting off now who has access to Maharaj, and that means like Jayapataka Swami, all right then, right? Or Gopal Krishna goes, all right, we'll let him in, right? But all he wants to do, he doesn't want to talk about how do you feel, right? He wants to talk Bhagavatam Katha, right? And so you have Rupa Goswami says, always remember Krishna and never forget Krishna. So always remember Krishna is what we just discussed. Anything that connects you and reminds you of Krishna, because that is the deciding factor at the time of death. Are you remembering Krishna, yes or no? It's a binary. It's not like a gray area. And what's your favorite sloka or anything? It's like, are you actually taking shelter of Krishna? We had a discussion with Advaita Swami where I was like, Krishna says, surrender unto me and I will deliver you. He doesn't say surrender unto Krishna, onto ISKCON, right? He says Krishna, and there's a subtle difference there, right? But then there's, is this on?
It was on.
It was on, okay. That's like a bad comedian. Is this thing on? And then there's the don't forget Krishna part, which is Vedic, which is you can do rites and mantras and, have a clean environment and all of that. But that's like, it becomes more and more secondary, because when the body is literally shutting down, it matters less whether the floor has been cleaned today. You know what I mean? It becomes more and more direct. So that's kind of the way we should live at all times, really, is try to be as directly connected with Krishna as possible. And then when we're not, then let's just not forget Krishna. That's why we have like Vedic and Varnashram and doing your duty and all of these things, because that's how Krishna likes. If you see the Leelas, that's how things are going on in the Bhagavatam. Does that make sense?
Sorry, can I be more specific?
Yes, you can. I love it when people are specific.
What can you do someone who's not devotee, who doesn't know what to do? Can you repeat the question?
Yes, so the question is, what can we do for someone who's not a devotee? I like to use my parents as an example. My parents are definitely not devotees, but what happened when I became a devotee was, initially my idea was, I'm going to preach the hell out of these people. And a senior devotee kind of pulled me aside and said, yeah, I would think twice about that. How about just try this out? Just be the best son they ever had. And my initial response was, what do you mean? They need to know the truth. They don't know anything. They're bloody demons, right? We need to get stuck in here, right? Unfortunately, there's no harm in just trying it out, right? And the reaction was tremendous. And they ended up coming to Mayapur and visiting me when I was based there. And they went to the temple and they bowed down. Out of cultural respect, but they bowed down to the deity. And they got it. They told me, yeah, we get it, why you would live like this. And then, of course, I started buying books for them, and that was a step too far. And so they were placed politely in the bookshelf for a while, and then they made it into a drawer, and now I don't know where they are. But the point I'm trying to get at is, when they die, I have faith that they will realize that their sailboat and their career that's over now won't save them. And then what? Maybe the son that had that spiritual thing going on, and what was that Krishna thing? And you can go back to Godhead like that. That's enough, right? You can become self-realized in one moment. So I think what I'm saying is, if you have someone who's not a devotee, don't try and preach to them when they're dying, right? But try and behave in such a way that they will be attracted, because the Yamadutas are scary enough. You don't have to scare them. It's scary enough, right? So if you're benevolent, they will come to you, right? And you can become self-realized in a moment. So that, who knows? Maybe my parents will go back to Godhead and I won't, because I don't feel like I'm done preaching or something, some stupid idea, right? Does that make sense? Yeah. So that's, incidentally, that's how you preach also when they're not dying, right? That's so.
I have two questions and one
Usually
sort of thing that came up.
Yeah.
That it almost seems like you are bound to be spiritual at the end of your life, because you're forced, you have to leave this body. So then these questions pop up. If you want it or not, they have to come to you. And the first question, so now we are in a situation that we are faced with the death of Maharaj. and it's very urgent. We feel the mission is very urgent. We have to bring it forward. We have to be the best disciple. But how can we keep this urgency when this moment has passed?
Yeah, very good, very good. Okay, so first on your first comment, no.
Oh.
There is one quality you cannot connect with Krishna, that's envy. Right? So if you're an envious, atheistic bastard, you will go down fighting to the last breath, and that will land you in a very improper situation after death, right? But for the vast majority of people, that is exactly what's going to happen, as you see and experience firsthand that literally the organs are shutting down, like the mind is shutting down. There's nothing to take shelter of. There's nothing. It's kind of the same thing addicts experience when they have this complete rock bottom where it's just become obvious that your life is over and nobody's coming to save you. That's when, of course, it's very, very. It would be an obvious association, like what about spirituality? Then the question is, do you have any idea what that is? Right? So best to prepare. In terms of the urgency, yeah, very, very astute observation. There's a natural sense of urgency that arises from a situation like this because it's very visceral, that this is the end of a chapter. Everything is different after this, right? So the way you want to, because the urgency is going to go away, but not if you, application is the key. Like now when you find that you experience this urgency, make a plan for something you can apply immediately, because then that application becomes the fuel that can drive it forward. Does that make sense? Like the moment that's why our spirituality, like real spirituality, is not about sitting in a cave and going Om silently for 60 years, right? That's basically what Arjuna is suggesting in the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita, and Krishna's like, no, that's not going to work, dude. And then later in the 6th chapter, which is the end of the first part of Gita, Krishna explains what that would actually mean. The Ashtanga yoga system, you'd just be sitting there and literally detaching your, and then it's Arjuna who says, yeah, I'm not going to do that, right? So you apply it into the world, you spiritualize your surroundings and apply it and get that taste, because it's the taste that's going to drive you forward. It's everything runs on Baba, right? Even from Shraddha to Prem, all of those steps is just one thing. It's an increase in faith that runs on Baba. We just call it different stages because at different stages, different phenomena will be prominent. But it's all just an uncovering of false ego in favor of the taste of Baba. Right? That's why on our side, where we are now, we're quite strict with philosophy because our mind is upside down. We're tending towards sense gratification, so we want to restrict that. But actually, as we switch from nishtha, from steady devotional service, this is where we become advanced. Then it starts to run on taste, right? And that's what you see, like with Maharaja now. He's completely, he's ready to go. He doesn't. This body is useless now. I'm ready to go wherever I can taste again, right? So we should take that example and apply it ourselves. Go out there and get some taste. And if you don't necessarily know how, there are those who do, because that's the beauty of being a sampradaya, is we do these things together. We help each other and we do things that we could never do on our own, right? And that again forges relationships. This is what Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, that the heart of our movement, the heart of the Sri Chaitanya Samaj, the actual movement is the Ishtagoshti, is the relationships between devotees, the sharing in confidence and revealing your mind confidentially, right? And so that sense of urgency has to be applied, otherwise it just dies, right? And then it just goes back to quote unquote normal, which is not normal at all. Yeah.
Yeah.
Was that was it? Yeah, okay, good.
Just that you can be self-realized in a moment.
Yeah.
Is it that you can have realization in a moment, but to become completely self-realized in a moment seems a bit short to me.
Yeah.
Can you a little more about it?
Well, it's what is it that keeps you from being self-realized is the idea that I can actually control and enjoy this place, right? So it's just a matter of a very rudimentary understanding of the concept of God and spirituality, and then enough fear, right? Because it's like there's this joke that there are some people that won't get off a sinking ship until they know why it's sinking, right? But there comes a point where it's just sinking and you just get off and it doesn't really matter off where, right? It doesn't matter. So the complete surrender, that's enough. You don't need philosophy. This is another one of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's very good points, is that what drives devotional service is faith or knowledge or Bhakti Shastri. That's all good to have on the side, right? When you're not fearful, you can have an understanding that, no, I should be striving in this direction instead of whatever nonsense my mind is telling me, right? But when you have this complete realization that I cannot save myself right now, then you start praying, and you may not know exactly what you're praying to. So it's not necessarily that you'll become a cowherd boy in Goloka Vrindavan or something, but you can become self-realized. There's a difference between self-realized and God-realized. Does that make sense? Right? That you can get out of the material world just by fear, like the proper little bit of understanding and then fear. That's enough, right? But then what we are suggesting is that there's a higher, fear is not recommended. Right? It's actually quite delightful to perform devotional service and chant Hare Krishna and eat prasadam, and it's a softer and gentler way, right? Now, having said that, this situation we're in right now, where our guru is ready to leave this mortal plane, inevitably will bring up that sense, like a fear. It's a fear. Like, what's going to happen? Like, what am I going to be okay? And so we can use that as fuel to become. Maybe it would take me 5 years to have the realizations that I'm having in a week now, right? Because I'm painfully aware of everything that's going on, and I have been made painfully aware that this will happen to me as well.
Sometimes you have realizations, but you don't act upon them.
Sometimes you have realizations, but you don't act upon them. Well, now we're getting a little bit into semantics. I would say that you can have knowledge you don't act on, because realization means it has become realized. That means you are acting in the capacity of the knowledge. Does that make sense? Like, there's in Vedic we talk about two different levels of consciousness. One is a level of knowledge, and beyond that is a level of realization, where you're actually living according to the knowledge. Because there's not a smoker in the world who doesn't know that smoking is unhealthy, right? So it hasn't become realized, and then they get cancer, and then suddenly they realize it. But then the fun thing that you're talking about happens. They stop smoking, and the cancer goes away, and then they start smoking again. This is a real example from a devotee friend I have. That happened to his father, and he began chanting Hare Krishna when he got lung cancer. And then, lo and behold, the miracle happened. The cancer went away. And then, well, I'm doing all right. Part of my preaching is with addicts, and they come in they're literally dying, and we get them sobered up, and we start doing like step work, which is basically anartha nivritti, but for dummies, right? And then after like a couple of weeks or a couple of months, no, I'm doing great. Yeah, I got this under control. And that's when you set the clock for self-destruction again, right? So you can become covered again. That's the problem with false ego, right? It is you go around and around. You have bad results, you become humble. Now you get good results from the humility. Now you become proud. Now you get bad results from the pride. Now you become humble, and you go round and round and round. And that's why it's important what we're doing now, because we have a very spiritually realized devotee who's leaving now, and he ain't coming back. So we can try and take the sense of urgency that we have and try and make sure that we won't, we'll do the same, right? That's why I said like this, apply it so it becomes realized, so it becomes a part of your life, right? Then you can get out of this samsara, this wheel of life, right? Does that make sense? Yeah. Hare Krishna, thank you. Okay.
If there's nothing more, we can read one more.
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Let's see what we have. Where are we? Okay. Death can be the perfect escape. I like that one. I want to know more.
One more thing about the other one.
Yeah?
It said he said death is a sheep.
Yeah. I guess the material energy is feminine because it's energy, right? And so the principle of material energy is just decay. I don't know if it's. I don't think you need to put. It's not like women or death or something. Don't worry about it. Yeah, but he's the superintendent. He's like the servant of like keeping the score. But death itself is just like all of the energy. Is like everything is decaying all the time, right? And that's just the nature of the energy without the energetic. So, yeah.
Can I just ask something along that? You just said everything is decaying.
Hare Krishna. Yes, everything is decaying.
But you have new plants coming up.
Oh yeah, but that's the spirit. Like we're talking about the material energy. So the body is decaying all the time, right? Like that's why if you want to ask about, like sometimes non-devotees ask about reincarnation, we're reincarnating right now. Like this skin that you're looking at wasn't here a month ago. Skin cell, that's what dust is. Skin cells falling off and regenerating. But what's regenerating is the spirit. What's falling off is the matter. So any type of energy not connected to the spirit, to the energetic, decays. Like a building, you create a new building, it's falling apart while you're building it, right? But as long as there's someone maintaining it, spirit, you can maintain it, right? But the moment you leave it alone, it's not like you have a bunch of rubble, then you come back after 20 years, suddenly there's a house. It only goes one way, right? You have a house, you go away for a few decades, you come back, what happened? There was no spirit maintaining it, and the same thing with the body when it's time for the body. Yeah, Hare Krishna. Yeah.
It almost seems like if we're becoming devotees and we're spiritualizing our body, that decay should be gone, because now I'm built out of spiritualizing.
It seems like we're becoming devotees, then we're spiritualizing the body, and the decay should disappear.
Yes.
Yeah, it is. Like when people always think I'm 10 years younger than I am. That was mainly when I was a brahmachari. Now I've been living in London for 5 years, so it's a little bit more rare that they say that, because I'm dealing with a lot more modes, right? But yeah, no, you see, and it's not really, if you just look at the skin you can see there are wrinkles and but it's the light in the eyes that make us seem young, right? So we do look younger. Like I was talking about, I preach to addicts. You see some of these people, it's like they're like in their 30s, they look like they're 60. You know? So the more materialistic you are, the older you're going to look. And the more spiritually realized you are, the younger you'll look. Like we have some of these sannyasis, they're in their 60s, they could go for 40 years old. Right? So, yeah. So it does slow down. Right?
Then if such an elevated soul with a spiritualized body, when decay takes over at the end of their lives, how can we see that with more spiritual vision then?
Yeah, that's the difficult part. That's why it's not always fun to be up at that place, because you see now from one day to the next, you can see that Maharaj is decaying, like he's leaving the body, his eyes just like sinking into his skull, and he's losing weight every day. And that is excruciating. It's not the memory you want of your guru. I want to remember Kadamba Swami as the Swami who wears out 3 20-year-old mridanga players in an afternoon during Harinam, right? I don't want, it's really hard being up there, right? But you do it for Maharaj because he needs some association around there. He needs Krishna Katha, he needs to remember Krishna, right? But what you can see, this is also described about the demigods. They're youthful until the day they die, and then they become old and die and wither, and that's it. You can see it with the 4 Kumaras. They're thousands of years old. They look like 5-year-old kids, right? Because they have no conditioning. You see it with devotees. They look youthful until it's time to go, and then it happens fast. Like a couple of weeks ago, Maharaj was doing Harinam, and now, it's not but it's because the spirit is really strong, and it's only when it is over then, because he's all, like we just read before, he's ready to go. He doesn't, he's not hanging on for no reason, and so when it's time to go, it's time to go. Does that make sense? Yeah. So you have that. We do look younger than full-blown materialists. And then when it happens, it's like you're watching it in real time, and it's painful. Right? So, is that okay?
One more thing.
Yeah, keep going.
Sorry. So the men who go to the Kirtan and all, they see the gradual change in Maharaj. But for us ladies, we're gonna have him in our mind, very alive and happy, and then when we see his samadhi form, probably it's going to be a big shock.
Yeah,
How
it's
can we
like...
prepare for that?
Well, have you seen pictures of Prabhupada towards the end?
Mm-hmm.
That's your preparation, right? That's not the Prabhupada you know, right? And maybe not suck in the impressions of that samadhi form, right? It's like, it's not him. He's gone. He's already left. He's somewhere else. Now it's just the material body left. So does that make sense? It's like, keep that memory. Keep that memory. That's him, right? The samadhi form, that is something else. He's gone.
And could you tell a little bit more about the impact of that samadhi form? What impact it can still have on us?
It's a samskar. It's a place to go, and the reason that you would burn the body is because you don't want the soul to get confused and be attached to the body and try to re-enter and then become a ghost because the body is no longer functioning. So someone who's self-realized doesn't have that problem. So you leave it as a place of samskara for the devotees who are attached to him, that you can remember, and there will be a verse put in the samadhi with them, and so it's like a spiritual, like a sanctuary.
So there's no energy left there, like some spiritualized...
Not that I've heard of, I hope not. I mean, he's not there. I don't know, does anyone know? I haven't heard that would be...
So when you go to Prabhupada, it's still, like the samadhi feels...
Yeah, you can feel that there's kind of a metaphysical effect, but it's not that there's it's not like...
What is the saint?
Huh?
We don't burn the saints?
Yeah, we don't burn the saints because there's no need, because they are liberated already, right?
Because we are not Christians.
Huh?
Because we are not Christians.
Because we're not Christians, yeah. Good one. That's a different kind of burning.
Because many devotees in our movement, their body got buried.
Yeah, that's the usual thing, because like we were saying, if you leave the body and you're not completely liberated, sometimes the soul gets confused and wants to re-enter the material body, and because the body is no longer functioning, they end up becoming ghosts. So you want to burn the body so the soul doesn't get confused and goes to wherever it needs to go, right? But if you're talking about a saint, that's not necessary because they're already liberated, and so you put them in samadhi as a ritual, for those who are left. But I'm not aware of any particular energy or if you feel, obviously there is a deep relationship with your guru, and so you go there, you'll feel all of that being triggered, and that's wonderful, and that's why the samadhi is there. So that's great.
Yeah, because it seems that a body that has served for so many years so intensely is different than just another body decaying in the ground.
Yeah, but the body hasn't really served, right? It's the soul that's served. The body just kind of tagged along. It's just like, sometimes you also say that, I think this Prabhupada said that, when we do Harinam, we purify the whole street with the Harinam. Whether or not we're talking about transcendental asphalt, I don't know if I wouldn't stretch this example, but it's just like, I've seen it when we were doing the King's Day Harinams. It's like there's something, sometimes you get some distance from the Harinam, and you're walking down the street, there's just a mood, there's just an energy, but I wouldn't stretch it and say that there's a oozing energy or from the samadhi. That may be a little bit speculative. So, yeah.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
I had actually asked this. Hare Krishna. Thank you. I had asked this question to my spiritual master once, that why so big samadhi for saints. Then actually I was referring to why such a big Srila Prabhupada Samadhi temple, because it's just a body of Srila Prabhupada. Then my spiritual master had answered that whatever comes in contact with fire, that also attains the qualities of fire. So the soul for such an elevated person is Satchitanandmaya, definitely. And so the body which was in contact with that spirit soul also is 100% Satchitanandmaya.
Mm.
It's non-different from Srila Prabhupada. So that's why Prabhupada Samadhi, or for that case, any other Acharya Samadhi. That's what he answered.
Good. Yeah. Yeah. Nice. Thank you. Very good. All right. Reading?
Yeah.
Okay, meditation 19. Death can be the perfect escape. Death is a Vaishnava victory celebration. Therefore, upon the death of a Vaishnava, festival arrangements are made. Friends and family come together to reflect on the many good qualities of the deceased, discussing the wonderful ways he or she impacted their lives. The individual's departure is glorious because a serious devotee goes back to Krishna, joins his guru, or is commissioned to perform higher service with even better association in his or her next life. Even if such a devotee does not fully graduate from having to enter into material bodies again, still his or her next life will be more auspicious. A healthy life is the goal of the devotee saint, for in death the devotee aligns or reconnects with eternal life and service. Death offers the soul a chance to make the final escape from all illusions and material incarcerations. The living entity, due to misuse of free will and enviousness of God, temporarily tries to become a master of the relative, transitory, illusory world of duality. Such an entity is given the chance to feel disconnected from transcendence in a place where he can try to become the supreme, making ridiculous efforts to lord over all that he surveys. In these attempts to enjoy and find happiness, the living entity simply contemplates the objects of the senses and forms sequences of acts leading to negativity. While contemplating the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment for them, and from such attachment lust develops, and from lust anger arises. Bhagavad Gita 2:62. The living entity, after experiencing extreme failures, setbacks, and frustrations, one day meets a bona fide spiritual mentor. He is informed that by expertly following these instructions, he gets the full mercy of his guru. Tat vidi pranipatina pariprasnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshinaha. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized soul can impart knowledge unto you because they have seen the truth. Bhagavad Gita 4:34. The Guru helps escort him out of his bodily imprisonment. Death offers the soul a chance to make the final escape from all illusions and material incarcerations. When the living entity undergoes the process of birth, it has a traumatic experience in the womb. The embryo is bitten by worms and inconvenienced by whatever the mother does. The poor being is cramped into a little sack, not knowing his future while subjected to intense suffering. A mature adult could never endure such suffering, but the worst is yet to come. For when the little being is forced out of the womb covered by blood and placenta, he is introduced once again to a life of physical and emotional suffering. It is only upon death that the jiva's incarceration can be fully terminated. Death offers the soul a chance to make the final escape from all illusions and material incarcerations. While in the physical body, living entities struggle individually and collectively at their most basic level. Their energy is focused on anamaya, simply evaluating the environment and looking for what is edible. Once the hunger is somewhat satisfied, then the individual becomes a little more involved, now focusing on pranamaya, the arranging for protection and security. When this drive is somewhat fulfilled, the entity now pursues manamaya, or intellectual pursuits and inquiries. If the jiva moves through these stages properly, he will advance to the stage of pursuing vijnanamaya and anandamaya, self-realization and transcendence. All of these stages involve tremendous work and subject the jiva to complex anxieties and sufferings. If one does not come to the stage of anandamaya, one is likely to once again enter into material bodies in the material world. Most global citizens rarely progress past anamaya and pranamaya, and most current governments and civilizations rarely mature past the first or second levels of survival and existence. However, death offers the soul a chance to make the final escape from all illusion and material incarceration. Life is a constant series of setbacks, tests, and challenges. As soon as we successfully pass one test or recuperate from a particular setback, another test, challenge, or calamity appears. Some people give up by committing suicide, becoming mentally depressed, or just accepting defeat and mediocrity. Others, who think they are still independent, creative agents, are often docile, controlled, and imprisoned by fads and propaganda. Those who are imprisoned by these social norms think that they are genuinely enjoying, but are actually even more imprisoned than those who are aware of their struggles, suffering, and pain. Being too comfortable in the material body is a disqualification for transcendence. Difficulties can aid us in moving through the stages of development more seriously, and death offers the soul a chance to make the final escape from all illusions and material incarcerations. When a person dies, the destination of the soul varies. Some jivas wake up and find themselves in their original swarup, looking very blissful and youthful, fully prepared to serve the divine couple in intimacy. When others leave their body, they find themselves having the same form as the Lord, and yet other jivas, due to the nature of their worship, go to reside in various abodes that correspond with their worship or lack of worship. Death offers the soul a chance to make the final escape from all illusions and material incarcerations. The living entity is sometimes like a carefree, spontaneous, lovely, wild animal that has been captured and forced into a cage. The cage is extremely confining, imposing all kinds of unnatural limitations on the jiva. Most jivas begin to know the boundaries and limitations as normal because, after all, everyone around them is confined as well. When prisoners remain in a cage for a long time, they begin to forget that there is any other existence than what they are presently experiencing. Therefore, one accepts and adjusts to such monotonous, restricted, and artificial life. From time to time, the pure devotee and even the Lord himself comes to rescue them. But more often than not, they are so entangled, covered by such illusions, and absorbed in immediate gratifications and problems that they miss out on the mercy that is extended to them. The great souls unlock the door of samsara, repeated birth and death. They try to point to the path of escape, but unfortunately, most of those who are incarcerated do not understand the wonderful opportunity being offered to them. Some rare souls, when coming in contact with the Lord and his special representatives, become fully attentive, joyful, and appreciative. These rare souls perceive the Lord and his envoys as the path for escape. After being sufficiently coached, they run full speed out of the prison cage, never to look back or return. If they do return, it is not as a prisoner, but as a warden, or more likely as a merciful guide who is eager to help escort the imprisoned jivas out of their horrific suffering and confinement. These guides fully understand the nature and intensity of each prisoner's suffering and are extremely empathetic. But even more important is that each guide is fully aware of the glorious life outside of the prison that is awaiting every jiva who has a successful escape. Anyone who accepts the full guidance of the Lord and his most special agents will have the most special escape. We want, beloved, to constantly remind ourselves and others that death offers the soul a chance to make the final escape from all illusions and material incarcerations. I am that lowly beggar who has been blessed by the Lord and his envoys. They have opened my prison cell, come inside to coach me, and now have invited me to come and join them. I will follow immediately, will I follow immediately, or will I postpone the invitation? And if I postpone it, will I remain able to perceive the path? Yeah, that's pretty cool. You hear these non-devotees talk about like there's nothing after death. I mean, where they know that from, of course, boggles the mind. But I remember that there's a quote. There's a guy who was saying to Prabhupada that like only stupid people need God, and Prabhupada says no, only intelligent people need God. Stupid people don't need God. They don't care. Intelligent people, they need God because they get it. Like if we're alone in this, we're screwed, right? So it's a great gift. It's a great gift, and we definitely need guidance. It's funny. I was just thinking about how the point we were making in the end before we read this, that Satchidananda, that the self-realized, that Acharya's body is non-different from spiritual energy. And I knew that, and I got confused because I've been sitting with Maharaja and looking, and I've been convincing myself that this is just the modes, and that was to soothe myself, right? Because I wanted to detach Maharaj from what I'm seeing. I'm not handling it that well, actually. I'm just realizing now, because like we were up there and there's the Kirtan going on, and there's this devotee next to me and he's singing too loud, and we've been told every day to sing silently. I'm like, these stupid Indian brahmacharis. And I was like, that has nothing to do with him. That's all me, right? So my point is that we're in a cell and we're not going to get out. We're that stupid. We're not going to get out. Even if the cell door opens, we still need someone to come in and take us out and guide us, because we've become so accustomed to this cell, and so I'm so accustomed to this speculative mind and identifying as an intellectual. And so I intellectualize Maharaj's passing, and I actually end up misunderstanding the philosophy. So we need to constantly take guidance. Thank God for audio recording equipment, that we're in this age. because we can get out, but we need help, right? Hare Krishna. Any questions?
I think it was mentioned there that the suffering of that child in the womb is more terrifying. I mean, even an adult won't be able to bear it.
Yeah.
That's something very strange. I mean, something different. A small child bearing so much pain and still enduring it because he's still alive. And that suffering, even an adult won't be able to bear it. Difficult to digest.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's unpalatable truth that the children can endure a lot more pain than adults. Like these kids' diseases. If some of them, if you get them as an adult, you die. Right, and as you progress and you become mature and you gain some understanding of how the world works, you also become more sensitive. Like wherever you attach your false ego, that's your weakness. So the most beautiful people in the world are the ones who cannot exit the house without spending 2 hours in front of the mirror. The most powerful people in the world are the one who seeks out a sex dungeon to be absolutely free of any responsibility. Most insane, dodgy behavior, right? The intellectuals are the ones who hate me the most because I discuss out from a different paradigm and they cannot comprehend not being the smartest guy in the room. The mere risk that someone will say something they don't understand freaks them out. They can't stand each other. You know what I mean? That's our weakness. What we think is our strength. And we think, no, I'm going to grow up and I'm going to be the controller and I'm going to enjoy, I'm going to have a car and a job and it's all going to make me safe. Nope, it's going to do the opposite. It's going to keep you away from safety because you cannot take shelter of it. And the more convinced you become about this, as time goes, the more weak you become to suffering. Right? So a child can endure a lot more. You want to hear something really scary? Women can endure more than men. Shudras can endure more than Brahmanas. So
this endurance is in terms of physical pain.
Yeah, just discomfort. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. Is that okay? Yeah. So whichever of the opulences that we kind of take shelter of, that will be your weakness. Right?
Yes. Thank you.
Krishna. How do we? Okay.
It was mentioned the different stage we can achieve after being a devotee. I don't know if you were reading too fast or not, but was it mentioned that we're going to the pastimes of Lord Krishna on another planet before we go to Vaikuntha? Prabhupada talked about that in the Krishna book.
I'm going to need the microphone in order to answer.
No.
Yeah.
I didn't hear it was mentioned.
Oh no, it was okay. So it wasn't mentioned because it was a slightly different thing being described. It was the levels of consciousness. Remember, we were talking about knowledge and realization. So we have anamoy. Ana means food. It just means rice food, right? So that's the lowest animal consciousness. You just, can I eat it? Can I kill it? Can I? That's the level of maturity on social media also. So we can add that to anamoy. And then we have pranamoy, which is like security and safety and justice and profit and morals and ethics and society and all the isms and ideologies and United Nations and all of that. Extended selfishness. But be very clear that Prabhupada says that extended sense gratification is the same as sense gratification. It's just covered, it's just hidden. but it's 0% better, right? Then you have Dharma, the level of knowledge, where you understand how the world works. That's not going to save you, because if you think you can use that knowledge to gratify yourself, you will always be disappointed, right? So beyond that is Vijnana, realized knowledge, where you realize, no, I'm none of this. I'm actually a spirit soul. I have to detach myself from all of these things, let them be, serve and do my duty, but ultimately not try to derive any sense of pleasure or satisfaction from it. That, ironically, will make you happy. But above that is Anandamoy, the level of bliss. And now we're getting close to what you're talking about. The level of bliss where you're acting out of love, out of bhava we were talking about before. This is when you can actually enter into the kingdom of God, right? Where it's not just getting out of the material, but it's getting into the spiritual, into the transcendental world, right? That's sustainable. It's the only level that's sustainable. Now, what you're talking about then is what happens if you are remembering Krishna, but there's tiny residue of just like the example is given of a container that has had hing in it. You can wash that thing for a long time and you'll still be, there's a little scent that's just lingering, right? Then you'll be sent to Gokul before Goloka, where you'll be trained up. Like you'll go to the real Bhakti Shastri, right? Like Bhakti Rasa Shastri, you could say, and then enter into the pastimes. Is that what you were referring to?
I thought it was systematic before going to Krishna Loka.
Yeah.
We had to go to Romalila to go on a planet where Krishna had his pastimes.
I mean, how do you mean? Like his Boma Leela, that you have to attend the Leelas? And I don't think so. I think it's like the outskirts of the spiritual world, where the demons are actually present, and then in the internal they aren't. There's just an idea that they are there, and that's enough to get the Leelas going.
I think it's you have to go through Brahma Vrindavan.
Yeah?
Before Gola Vrindavan. Brahma Vrindavan.
Okay, I think I've heard it, like I was taught as Gokul, but maybe it's the same thing.
We can obtain Swarupamuti same like the Lord and all
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
This is direct. But to go with Krishna, I think we have to first go to a place where he's performing his pastime.
In material world.
Yeah,
In the
yeah.
material
That's why it's
world.
Bhoma.
Yeah. Okay.
That's what I understood in the Krishna books.
Anything?
One.
Yeah.
The last one is at 6 o'clock.
So many of us are just big balls of emotion at the moment, and I'm wondering how to change the focus from what we feel like we're losing to focusing on what Guru Raj is gaining now, because it's obvious that he's on a different plane, and there's so much mercy coming his way, and it's something that we should be so joyful for, and there are moments of joy, but they're just such moments of pain, and I think I'm struggling to say what is the, how to take it away from me when I'm feeling what I feel like I'm losing, even though my head knows that this relationship is not going to be lost, but my heart hasn't yet experienced a relationship in separation with him yet.
Well, it's necessary to let the transformations of mind take the time they take. You can't really force it. Like if you see the chapter of the passing of Bhishma Dev in Bhagavatam, all the eternal associates are there, they're not celebrating the grand destination he's going to. They're all very sober and morose and sad, right? Why? Because they're losing the association of a great devotee. So it's not that we shouldn't be sad, right? It's just that we shouldn't be sad about the body and the pain and where is he going, and am I ever going to get Maha from Maharaj ever again and stuff. That you don't have to worry so much about that, right? It's just that he's leaving and we love him. So it would be awkward to pretend that doesn't hurt, right? But it's not like I'm losing, like I'm getting fired from my job, or like that's not the great mood, right? But that we're losing the association. And then it ties into what we were talking about before, this sense of urgency. Then now you have to perform a little alchemy on that, because otherwise it just becomes like self-destructive and whiny and self-pitying, right? So now you have to start applying. What would Maharaj do? Maharaj is not here to do what he does. What would he have me do? How can I do some of what he did? Like so that the Kadamba Kanana Swami Leela kind of continues through his disciples, right? And now we have a golden opportunity, right? That's what Maharaj did. He came right after Srila Prabhupada left. That's what he did. Okay, what would Prabhupada then have me do? And he did. He did quite a lot, right? And so there's not a Prabhupada disciple on the planet who doesn't respect him as one of their peers, right? And so we can apply the same principle. What would Maharaj have me do? Like, what would make him happy? And then, because then the sadness and the sober kind of feeling, it automatically gets transformed into something constructive. And then that feeling you're describing of how wonderful it actually is and where he is now and what he's thinking about what we're doing, that will come naturally. It's not, an emotion doesn't come by intellectual like speculation. You know what I mean? It's like you can stop spinning out of control with intellectual. Like intelligence is above emotion, so you can kind of talk yourself down from going completely nuts. But if you want to transform the emotion into something positive, you have to apply. You have to go to that vijnana level, the level of realization where your thoughts and your actions are actually connected. That's sometimes what we see with devotees is that when they kind of lose the faith and when the fault finding starts and when these things, it's because what they're saying and what they're doing is disconnected. They're talking about like Siddha Swarup and pure devotional service, and they're just sitting around on Facebook all day. That's when the trouble starts, right? So the way we keep inspired is by acting the way that Kadamba Kanana Swami would have us act. And then that feeling of how glorious his life is, we'll get a little taste of that, and we can see, oh, wow, he must be really having a lot of fun right now, actually, because he's probably, who knows what he's doing with the cowherd boys or whatever, right? But does that make sense? So it all comes down to application. It's why our main deity is Govinda, our main acharya is Rupa Goswami, the Abhideya Acharya. It's all about application. That's what devotional service is, right? And then that transformation happens automatically. You have something?
Maybe I would like to have something.
Yeah, please.
I think one thing we can try is to really see the whole thing from the perspective of Maharaj. Like what he needs now, what he wants now. For example, 3 days ago I brought a letter from his senior disciple, Shika from the Netherlands for 3 days here to see him, and she couldn't see him. She gave him a letter. And I gave the letter to Maharaj, and he said, I don't want to read any letters anymore. So I realized he really tries to die before dying. He tries to detach completely from the material sphere so he can fully focus on the spiritual, because otherwise he will come back and be a spiritual master again, because he's not going out of this role and position and identity. right? So it's difficult because he did it so long and he has so much appreciation and attachment and care and everything. But his duty is now to really focus on the spiritual. And what we can do is really support him in this and not try to keep him in this old role and identity, but support that, like with our whole meditation and energy and spirit, that he can fully focus on the spiritual and go there. And that's the greatest service we can do, as what I can think of.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I think like just mirroring like what we're saying about Maharaj, he's trying to die before dying. So in reciprocation with that, we should try to move on before moving on. Like we should try to, now this is it. It's us now. Right? And so it's gonna happen whether we hang on for the and kicking and screaming and don't want it and don't accept it. Or we can go accept it now and think, all right, now we have this family. That's a lot. Like a handful of people can do a lot of good in the world, right? And we have what? I think Maharaj told me 1,100. That's how many disciples he's got. I was surprised. There's that many.
It added up at the end.
Huh?
It added up at
He was saying when Indrajumna Swami was there, he was saying, I almost caught up to you. If I'd been around for another 10 years, I would have surpassed you. But now, and then Indrajumna Swami said, well, you'll be the big brother on the other side. You're leaving first, so when I come, you'll be bigger than me. So they were having that was a few days ago when Maharaj was still had energy to talk, but now it's over. Like we have to move on now, and and that's the thing with Bhishma, that chapter again. I think I meditate on that a lot now, because it's like they're just standing around and letting him die. Really, like they're not like, oh Maharaj, you've done so much for me, and I'm so grateful. And it's like, no, we've already said that. Now it's time to die, right? Yeah.
Actually, what Maharaj is listening at the moment again and again is the 11th chapter in CC, is the dying of Thakur Haridas. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was in ecstasy and holding him in the hands and dancing in ecstasy after he left his body. So that's his meditation, kind of.
Yeah, yeah. Really good.
Thank you so much.
All right.
So Maharaj is not speaking.
Well, I mean, there was one brahmachari who got a few words earlier today, but he doesn't want to. Like you can see, I don't know how much I can reveal, but I'm known for saying more than I should, so I'll just tell you. Jayapataka Swami called, and Jayapataka Swami has a translator, because he's also, it's just Maharaj. It's hard for Maharaj to keep a conversation. Of course, he has to take this conversation, right? But it's just, at some point, it's just over, right? It's just breathing is hard. So what to speak of having a conversation about how much service you've done, It's that's the perfect meditation, that CC, that's where we are, So, does that make sense? Yeah. So he's kind of mentally, he's talked out, he can say words, right? But there's nothing to say, we've said it all. He's said more than most, and more meaningful than most. So now he's ready. He's ready to.
I just want to ask something, because Srila Prabhupada stayed for months without eating.
Srila Prabhupada stayed for months. Yeah.
He stayed for about 8 months
without
eating at all, just a spoon of water, spoon of juice sometimes, What about if Maharaj stays for a long time like this?
What about if Maharaj stays like this for 8 months or more?
No, I mean like his body is going to ache a lot from being laying down. So is there like maybe some help we can do to get him like a special bedding or something?
No. No, there's for every person he needs to help him, there's 1,000 people trying to. So there's nothing.
He proposed already to get he proposed already to have a special mattress.
Why is that important, if I may ask?
Only if he lays in bed for
No.
his body's gonna wound and everything.
Okay, so I think my point is, try to meditate on Kadamba Swami as the person he was and is. This is all taken care of, right? This is not something we need to worry about now. This is all mundane and practical, you know. I heard one astrologer said his chart actually said he was supposed to die like 20 years ago when he got shot. That's actually when his chart runs out. But I can't remember who said. I'm not sure if it's actually bona fide. But I guess my point is like he's done his job, you know. We would be speculating on how long he's got. So, yeah. Hare Krishna. Thank you for tolerating me.
Thank you for guiding us.
Yeah. Hare Krishna.
3 times a big Hari Bol.
Hari
Bol. Hari Bol. Hari Bol.
Kadamba Swami Maharaja ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Om Vishnu Parvanam Sapari Chakaracharya Statara Satri Srimati Swami Grace A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem Shri Bahur Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasanta Gaura Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Govindana Jam Kunda Radha Kunda Kiri Govardhana ki jai. Shri Vrindavan Dhama ki jai. Mayapur Dhama ki jai. Jagannath Puri Dhama ki jai. Gangamai ki jai. Munamai ki jai. Bhakti Devi ki jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaura Pramanande.